Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hardwood Nation podcast with your boy CL Anthony and the newly married Bryce Ward. What's going on, brother?
Not much. Thanks for the intro and just glad to be back. How are you?
I'm fucking fantastic as always. So, while you're gone, we had a couple of things happen this week. Just a week after the New York City mayor said that the mandate would be for an indefinite period of time, he changed his mind. So Kyrie Irving is back to a full-time NBA player. How relieved are you feeling at this point that we can finally put this to bed?
I'm very excited. This is something we've been waiting for since just before the season, and with anticipation on what would happen or could happen this year. So, um, things are falling in place for a lot of teams here at the end of the season. Uh, we're just happy, or I'm happy to see Brooklyn at what seems like at full strength for the first time in I don't since they've tried to come together, I guess, or close to it. They haven't had too many games together, so all the team together. I mean, so I'm excited. It's good for basketball fans. It's good for Brooklyn fans, and it's good for the playoffs. So I'm excited. This is what we've been waiting on all season.
Yes, I'm excited as well, and it seems like my pick is my pick. My pick is not going to change. I do believe
Hmm.
Brooklyn is not going to win the NBA championship this season. Kevin Durant even said last week he was like, "We don't have to win it this year." I think it was too much dysfunction going on this year for them to rally together and do it. Kyrie Irving said
Hmm.
now that this mandate is lifted, he's going to sign his extension in the offseason. So let's see what kind of moves they make going forward to have a more complete team. As currently constructed, they have a better team than they had at the beginning of the season. Even with James Harden, they have a better team now. They have more pieces now than they had at the beginning of the season. So as constructed right now, they're better than they were then. Still don't think it's enough. They are going to give people hell in the playoffs, which we're going to talk about really soon. Um, but I'm happy they're back. So now there's no more excuses because we've been saying all year, okay, what's your excuse going to be this year? Um,
Hmm.
we're going to see some good basketball. Kevin Durant had a month off. He's back. He's healthy. Hopefully, Kyrie doesn't go down with an injury, but we know how the basketball gods are, um, especially with his past with injuries. But I think it's going to set up a very interesting playoff because right now the Brooklyn Nets are sitting in the eighth seed, so they're going to be in the play-in tournament. Not against Toronto. We have some movement against Cleveland now. Um, so there very well could be. Are you ready for this?
Hmm.
A Brooklyn Philadelphia 76er first round matchup because the Sixers are now number one in the East with the Heat losing 4 games this week. We'll touch on that later. How do you feel about a potential playoff matchup with Philadelphia and Brooklyn in the first round? We are almost a week away from this.
I'll be very interested on seeing a few things. One is like the reception and how Ben Simmons plays. Two is Kyrie and Durant going to play in such a way to where Harden does what we've known Harden to kind of do in the playoffs, which is kind of to get overshadowed and not have those not take over those big moment situations, I guess. You know. So is it if it's going to be all on Embiid? I'm just interested to see how like the dynamic of those games go and how Harden plays in those most important moments compared to like
Mm.
say Kyrie, who seemed to really want to take over and kind of expose Harden. That in the one time or when they recently played and it seemed like Brooklyn was the dominant team. So are we going
Yes.
to see a lot of
Yes.
that, or are we going to see Harden finally kind of step up?
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested to see, as well as the Ben Simmons dynamic. Because Kyrie, Durant, Embiid, I expect all of them to have big games.
Up until last night, that win that Brooklyn had against Philly was the biggest win of the season. Now we can put the Heat win up there as well because they defeated the Heat last night as well. Um, Brooklyn's going to be a tough out in the playoffs. Again, I don't believe they're going to win the championship, but whoever has to go through them is going to be an extremely tough out. So right now, it's Philadelphia. Um,
Do you
can
think
Philly?
Milwaukee this year has enough to take out a healthy Brooklyn?
I think they do, especially with getting back Brook Lopez. Milwaukee's big, and don't get me wrong, Brooklyn got a little bigger, especially with Drummond in the middle, and he's been balling. He has been balling. Okay, um, but Milwaukee is still so fucking big. But right now, I'm looking at the standings right now. You have a good God. Okay, we're gonna shift gears a little bit. Right now, you're looking at Milwaukee and Chicago in the first round. That's going to be a dogfight.
Yeah.
They're in the same bracket as Brooklyn. So Brooklyn and Milwaukee could actually meet in the second round. So I know we took
Milwaukee will
last.
be a little tired.
Listen, here's the crazy thing that just happened with the Eastern Conference this week. I know we took last week off. The entire Eastern Conference shifted, and what I mean by that is we were we were talking about. Sorry, I paused there.
Good.
Brooklyn is actually in play. Forgive me. They're in play for more so for the Heat versus Philadelphia right now. If they can beat Cleveland, they're going to see the Heat in the first round. So forgive me on that. The play in really throws me off.
Yeah,
Philly's
it's all good.
Philly's looking at the winner of Charlotte and Atlanta and whoever loses the other playing game. So right now Brooklyn is still looking at Miami perhaps in the first round. Toronto, who was in the play-in, who moved up, they're looking at Boston in the first round. Boston is half a game out of the first seed. It's realistic that the Boston Celtics, with their rough start at the beginning of the season, could have the number one seed because Miami has a tiebreaker over Milwaukee. Miami has a tiebreaker over Philadelphia. They do not have the tiebreaker over Boston. Crazy.
Wow.
So if we
And
have,
kudos
if
to Boston for really
yes,
turning that around, because on paper, it just seems like tons of talent. So
yes, they figured it out and they figured it out at the right time. Um, God, the East is going to be on fire this year. So speaking of the
every
Heat,
round.
yeah, speaking of the Heat, I know you want to add some things about the Miami Heat since it's no secret I'm a Heat fan. So fire them off at me. I don't care. Fire them off.
Okay, so what's just interesting is like you guys usually aren't in the media or not in the news for like wild stuff going on in the court. Like I say, you're kind of like the Spurs of the West. I mean, you have confrontations sometimes with other teams, but amongst the organization, there seems to be a lot of always unity and being on the same page from Pat Riley down to your coach to, the guy at the end of the bench. It's a Heat culture thing. So even though you guys say, this happens all the time in practice, which I'm sure happens in a lot of places, it's rare to see these kind of blow ups at least recently on the Heat sideline. So they have like two in a row and both to be on Jimmy Butler, who has like a history. I don't think it's odd for people to be like, what's going on there right before the playoffs, you know, when it's just odd. So I get why there's a lot of attention and questions going on around those situations lately. So even though you brush it off, it's just like it's interesting on my end to see what's going on, to ask you in detail, do you think anything else more is going on? Because I know it's like two things back to back, And I know that's not necessarily a lot in hindsight, but right now, before the playoffs, it's like you've been strong all season. It's like right now, is this how you want to look, or is this, are you wavering? It's like, what is this? What's going on? Because it
No,
looks odd to me. It looks
it's not.
odd.
It's not two things back to back. What two things are you talking about?
Well, it's just like, I guess Jimmy Butler not only getting into it with like Haslam, but also getting into it with Spolster.
Got it.
Because
Okay.
the Haslam thing makes
Got it.
sense. The Spolster thing to me makes less sense.
No. So
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 that
sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
no,
He
you're good. The one I can brush off, the one I need more explanation on.
here's the perception of Eric Spoelstra, and people think Eric Spoelstra is a punk, right? They think he's a soft coach. They Eric Spoelstra is an alpha male. So people who've watched the Heat for a long time will know he's an alpha male. He'll get into a player's face. I'm talking about before Jimmy Butler. Like, he's not afraid to call players out. I heard him in an interview recently say part of the reason he got the job was because when he was an assistant coach and they were breaking down film, Pat Riley told him to call the players out in their meeting. And he was like, "What?" And Pat said, "Call them out." And Spoelstra went up there and called them out, and the players responded in a positive way. And he said that was the day Pat Riley knew that he was going to be the next coach. Okay.
Mhm.
Just 2 weeks ago, they celebrated Chris Bosh being in the Hall of Fame, and Chris Bosh talked about his relationship with Spoelstra, and he said it was always combative, but that was a good thing because Eric Spoelstra would challenge him to be more than what he was. So, knowing what I know about Miami, knowing what I know about Spo, knowing what I know about Jimmy, and knowing the circumstances of that game, like I told you, the game was tied at halftime. Right after halftime, the Golden State Warriors went on a 13-0 run. Eric calls a timeout and started bargaining at his players, including Jimmy Butler. Now, that's what he does. The Heat have lost in their last 10 games. They're 5-5. So it's like this is actually the worst stretch of the season, I believe. So
Mhm.
everybody's on edge because they're losing right now, and they haven't really lost like this so far this season. So Jimmy was fed up that the coach was calling them out. So you have two alpha males, because we know Jimmy's an alpha. You have two alpha males who are generally on the same page in a super competitive moment. And remember, the Golden State Warriors were down stars, and the Philadelphia 76ers were down stars, and we had lost to them too.
Mhm.
Um, so the issue isn't a Spoelstra versus Jimmy issue. And Udonis, like I said, Udonis was defending his coach. So yeah, we get that one. The issue is, I think the Miami Heat are bored. Even a few games before that incident, Kyle Lowry made the comment. He was like, "We're just ready for the playoffs at this point. Like we're done. I think they mentally have checked out of the regular season and they're looking to the playoffs. Now, to respond to what you said, that concerns me because you have home court advantage at stake throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs. So that's the part that concerns me. But maybe they're fine with being on the road a series or two. I don't know. But I just think they're bored. And I think you have two super alpha males who, for a brief second in time, didn't agree. Um, Shit happens.
Mhm.
That's and I did go back and watch that Stephen A. Smith interview where he was breaking it down, and he actually said he called he called some of his guys in the Heat to see how bad the situation was, and nobody would talk to him. So I was like, okay, he was like nobody would talk to him. So he was like that's Miami Heat culture. Like he was like I respect him for that because no one let anything leak out. So um and another thing I say about and this is a very minor thing about Heat culture is I watched the game live in the live telecast, they did not show that interaction. And I remember because one of the announcers were like, "There's dysfunction on the bench," but the cameras during the game never flashed over that, never flashed over so you could see that. And then I went to bed, And I woke up the next morning. I'm getting all these messages like, "What's going on with your team? What's going on?" I'm like, "What the fuck are y'all talking about?" Dude, I had no idea. And and then Gerald sent me the YouTube clip, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's what happened." But during the game, I don't know who made the call. During the game, they did not show that clip. Um, and that's just how Miami does things. But I don't think there's no internal problem with the Heat. They're just bored, and I think this is the wrong time for them to get bored.
Yeah, because for me, it came off not so much as a boredom. It came off as more of like a tired, stress situation.
Mhm.
Falling to these teams without these teams having their quote unquote like full lineup or their A
Right,
lineup, and
right.
then like you said, you're not used to losing much this year, and then down at the stretch, you see more like a tired. Just like kind of throwing fits because you're just worn out more than a boredom. So I hope that's what it is, but it's not the right vibe or look for me. I think going into the playoffs when you've been so strong all season, and it's just not the feeling I would want if I was like a Heat fan. That's not the feeling I would want from my team right now. But I
Right.
mean, your record speaks for itself. The playoffs start soon. It's just there's a lot of teams that seem like they're hitting their stride right now,
Hmm.
and it seems
Hmm.
like maybe you guys are having a trouble or having a hard time keeping your stride going. So you're still my pick to come out of the East. But depending on how things fall and depending on who you get first round and how the playoff matchups go after that, it's just I would want everything to be perfect, and it didn't look like perfect
Yeah,
for
no,
the
no,
first time all season.
yeah,
So it's just
no, they're
bad
not
timing.
perfect. They're not perfect. And even Kyle Lowry said he was like we're not where we need to be at yet. Um, and Kyle's a vet, NBA champion, been in the league tons of years. So when I hear people like that talk, um, it I take notice of what they said. So yeah, if Kyle Lowry's saying we're not ready yet, guess what? We're not ready yet. We're not where
Yeah.
they need to be at, but they still have time to get there. Last night would have been the perfect game to do that, but they laid another egg last night. So that's where we are at Miami. Let's see how they close out the season. As I explained earlier, they own a couple of tiebreakers, so the number one seed isn't lost. I mean, we're literally only 3 percentage points behind Philly right now. We have the number two seed, so it's still super close. But when it's all said and done, those tiebreakers are going to kick in, and we'll see how the Miami Heat does. Let me ask you this question before we move to our next topic. I'm not saying the Heat are doing this. Do you think some of the teams in the top of the conference are trying to avoid Brooklyn now?
Um. Uh. I don't know because, I mean, to a sense it makes sense, but like for Boston, um, I don't feel like, or for anybody, if you have momentum,
Hmm.
then maybe it's not even something on your radar because you don't want to break up the trajectory of your team, like riding a high wave, kind of like Boston started off slow. You don't want to do anything different to derail what they're doing. I'm not saying they would as the number one seed. I'm just saying it's hard for me to think that way. So it's
Sure.
hard for me to project that on a team, even if it could quote unquote be good for them, because I just don't think that way. So I don't know enough about these front offices and some of these teams to just come out and say, I think they're going to do this or they could do that. I'm not going to say that. So I think teams go out there, the players go out there to play to win, and that's just the mentality I'm going to keep.
We know there's upsets every year in the playoffs. Again, if Miami plays Brooklyn, I'm not worried about Brooklyn. But I keep looking at Boston and Toronto, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Boston, but it might be something there. That might be an upset because Toronto's been playing very well this year, considering they have absolutely no one on that team, and they got themselves out of the play-in. Um, that one, that I'm gonna be curious about that one. And then also, And the Western Conference, which we'll talk in a minute, right now I'm looking at Golden State and Denver. I'm looking at that one too. Those are going
Dude,
to be some good ones.
there's gonna be some series this season. It's crazy how tough some of these outs are gonna be. I see a
Right.
lot of these teams that make it into the conference finals and
Mm.
finals. They're gonna be worn out one way or another. They're gonna be just worn out because some of these are gonna have to go seven. There's unless there's like injury or something drastic changes. A lot of these are going to be 7 game, 6 game series at least, and if they're not, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. So this is one thing we know for sure. No matter how much for the last 2 weeks of the season these teams rotate and joust each other and positions change, the Phoenix Suns have clinched the number one overall seed throughout the playoffs. They will host every playoff series in Phoenix. How impressed are you with the Suns, considering coming off that just devastating finals loss last year? They started off a little slow this year, losing Chris Paul for like the last month almost. How impressed are you with what the Suns have done to just continually be competitive in all these games?
Um, I think it's just I'm not as surprised as I was last year. They basically did the same thing. The whole team got better. We talk about these teams having to take steps to progress in like deeper into the playoffs. Um, they were great all last season. They were great throughout the playoffs, despite some injury woes like a lot of teams had.
Hmm.
Um, and then they got beat in the finals. Uh, to me, the natural progression with everybody healthy, everybody coming back, was to basically be able to duplicate, if not be better than they were last year. So the fact that they were able to survive Chris Paul being out for about a month and a half, something like that, um, towards the was it third to fourth quarters of the season.
Yeah.
After already building the record they had all season, none of it seems surprising to me. Their offense is so fluid, I guess, with the amount of practice together that team has, and with a guy like Devin Booker who can do everything. Um, Chris Paul is a huge factor and is going to be major in the playoffs, but they can win games. They can win regular season games as is without him. So, it's almost maybe a blessing in disguise to give the rest of his body a rest right before the playoffs because you're going to need him. You're going to need him if you really want to win a championship. And I think this year they're more primed than last year to do it. And if they walk into the finals with a healthier or with at least a somewhat healthy Chris Paul and everyone else is healthy as well, it's going to be really hard to beat Phoenix this year.
I just saw something pop up on my phone. I sent the schedule out earlier today, and dude, I don't pay attention to it. I sent the schedule out. The Sixers play the Suns today, so you have number one in the East and number one in the West today. Okay, the 6 o'clock game. I had no idea.
Nice.
I will be watching that. I had absolutely no idea. How impressive, just to piggyback off that real quick, how impressive has Philly been considering the turmoil they had all year, the Ben Simmons drama, that they've still stayed at the top of the Eastern Conference and now they're number one again? So, how impressive is that for Philly, from Philly's standpoint?
It's just a testament to everything they have going on there, but that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We talk about Philly being like one thing, like one piece away from on paper looking like they have enough to win a championship. Embiid plays on MVP caliber level
Yeah.
every year as long as he's healthy. They have, for a lot of people, they have the right coaching to win a championship, despite some people saying Doc Rivers has some odd choices at certain times of games. Despite that, he does have championships. Um, you have young wings. You have Maxi who can play. You know, you have a lot of things there that say you can win a championship, and then you replace Ben Simmons, who for lack of a better like understanding, is you don't it's not working there. Not I don't know if Ben Simmons can recover from last year's playoffs and be a dominant player in this league and help a team win a championship. I'm not saying he can or cannot. I'm saying that shit passed. So replacing him with Harden, looks like nothing but a win. But then Harden has his flaws in the playoffs and questions around whether or not he can do what he does and it affect your team and win games. So on paper, Philly looks great. They're on record this year. They look great. They have an MVP on their team, and they have arguably one of the best scorers right now. So they should be able to pull it off.
Hmm.
I mean, he's just nothing but praise for them. So
Yeah,
I won't be surprised if they're in the finals or the conference finals. None of that. There's like 3 or 4 teams in the East. It's like, yep, it could be any one of these.
right, right, right. The East is wide open.
Yeah.
They're absolutely wide open. I'm going to ask you about a couple of topics because we've gone through our main topics already today. LeBron James is 15 points away from scoring 37,000 NBA points. Your thoughts? Only the second player in the history of the league to do
Well, I hope he does it tonight against the Pelicans because I could really use him in fantasy.
that. That's going to actually be a play-in preview, so I'm pretty sure he's going to play tonight. Um, Shaquille O'Neal said something interesting this week. He said something that we talked about the last time. Um, Last season, I picked the Suns to beat the Lakers, and that's what happened. This season, a lot of people are picking the Lakers to beat the Suns because Anthony Davis should be coming back very soon. So Shaquille O'Neal just flat out said, if the Lakers play the Suns in the first round, the Lakers are going to win. I asked you this before. I'm going to ask you again. How how much of a threat are the Lakers a bigger threat to the Suns than the Nets are to the Heat?
Hmm. Uh, Not a bigger threat. They're equal because Brooklyn's a problem for anybody, let alone or also the Heat. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving is as big of a problem as LeBron James and healthy, motivated Anthony Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's all I can say. I'm not going to pick the Lakers over Phoenix. It's 50-50 just because it's LeBron in the playoffs and Phoenix is number one. And I picked the Lakers last year. Phoenix pulled it out. I think Phoenix is better this year, even though I thought the Lakers were better. The record in the regular season has not went that way. So
Right.
it's just like I, like fool me once, but it's you have the wild card LeBron James and maybe the bigger wild card this year Anthony Davis, but I I don't know. It's a 50-50 toss up for me. I can't wait to see it.
Look, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. And I've been a lightning rod all year, which we give no fucks about that. I will never, ever, ever say anything negative about Russell Westbrook. He has always shitted on Chris Paul. I think if there's a series that could turn the perception of Russell Westbrook around with the Lakers fans, it's this series. If he can shit on Chris Paul one more time.
That's a
No, no,
big if because
I,
Chris Paul seems to be really
hey,
feeling himself this season.
I'm just being
More,
realistic. I'm
I
just being
know.
real. He has never, ever played good against Westbrook. Westbrook is a problem, a big problem for Chris Paul. Big matchup problem. Bigger, stronger, faster, just all of it. So I agree with you. The problems from the East and the West with the Lakers and the Nets it is equal. But in that specific series, I think Westbrook is actually more so the X factor than Anthony Davis and then LeBron James. Because you know what you're going to get with LeBron. You kind of know what you're going to get with AD. You don't have a fucking clue right now what you're gonna get with Westbrook. You just don't. One game is
Mm-mm.
great, one game is not. You just don't. But I think this is a series where he can turn it around and really help those guys get over the hump. I'm still going with Phoenix, but it's hard for me to go against the Lakers.
Do you think this is LeBron James's like Tim Duncan last year to do it, or do you think that he's still got that season left in him, or do you think this is it?
I give them one more out of respect. I don't think this is it. I want to see how they reload in the offseason because the pieces they brought there, the impact pieces they brought there, haven't been impactful. And I don't believe it's 100% their fault. I believe it's the coach's fault because you have to
Yeah.
figure out look, Carmelo Anthony is not a defensive player, but he's a knockdown shooter. Just get him open shots. The coach has to figure that out, right? Um, so it's things like that, like Dwight Howard. Yeah, he can't play a full 48 minutes, but he can still play impactful minutes, but you don't give him the opportunity. So Anthony Davis went down, and you still haven't heard a peep from Dwight Howard, right? It doesn't make nothing
Mm.
makes sense. It doesn't make sense. So I just think it's a bad. People say it's a bad player mix. To me, it's a bad coaching mix. That's just where
Mm.
it's at. But I'll give LeBron one more year to see how they retool in the offseason because Lakers fans, the team you see now, is going to be gone. They're going to completely redo that.
Yeah.
Uh, look, a lot of those guys were on 1 and 2 year deals. I still don't think they give up on Westbrook just yet, but if they do, there's already rumors that some team next to Mickey Mouse would be ready for Westbrook.
No,
Um,
we're not doing that. We're not even talking about that.
oh, that's already out there. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
I didn't
no,
mean to
I
hurt
ain't
you.
worried about
Oh,
that.
that's already out there. You didn't know about
Well,
that?
lots of things are gonna be out there. It's fine. I ain't
No, this
worried
was
about it.
big out there. No, this was big out there. This was
I
big.
don't care.
You know,
I don't care.
Westbrook's wife even referenced it. Oh, it's big out there. Yeah, it's big out
Nobody
there in
wants
them.
to come to Orlando. Stop.
It's big out there in those streets. Hey, listen,
I ain't worried about them Facebook streets.
it wouldn't be a free agent. It'd be a trade. His wife already dropped that nugget. Trust me.
Well, luckily she's not the GM for anybody, so that's nice.
Okay, just, y'all heard it first here. Westbrook to Orlando. Um, but yeah, those 1 and 2 year deal guys, they're gonna be gone. They're gonna be gone.
Yeah,
So I
for
so
sure.
I give them one more chance to reload. But no, next season is gonna be absolutely probably it for LeBron, and rightfully so. Because I mean, when you're pushing 40, you've already won championships. So when you're pushing 40, man, that shouldn't be your goal. You've already won them. I mean, we know he's chasing that ghost, but ride it out. Just enjoy your golden years. Um, so I think that's it. I don't have anything else right now. Is Joel Embiid still your MVP?
Right now,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm changing my mind. I'm going with Jokic. Ha!
He flip flopped like three
I flip
times this
I
season.
flip flop. I went from DeRozan to Embiid. Now I'm on Jokic because his numbers now are better than they were last year. But I do understand his pieces are missing this year, so he had to do more. But his numbers are better than last year. It's just like what the fuck. So that's gonna be
That's
it,
what I
ladies.
feel about Embiid. Just like hasn't been able to have any consistency this year because of Ben Simmons. So he's just like, I'll just do it myself.
Right. So that's going to be it, ladies and gentlemen, for this week's episode of the Hardwood Nation podcast. Please subscribe. I can't talk, and share our content. We are on YouTube at Hardwood Nation, Twitter at Hardwood Nation. Oh God, Siri's talking to me now. What is going on? You guys have a good day.
Right. See ya.